The needle slipped through the fabric like a whispered secret, stitching a torn seam that had been ripped open in the chaos of battle. She worked in silence, as she always did, her hands steady, even when the world around her was not.
Ow.
But then the general walked in, and everything changed. His eyes fell on the patch she wore, not the standard insignia, but one no one was supposed to see. And in that moment, the room felt smaller, as if every breath was being held at once. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. Lena Calder had been assigned to the laundry and repair unit, a job that meant she never had to speak louder than the hum of the sewing machine. She liked it that way. The machine's rhythm was predictable, unlike the battlefield. It gave her something to control, a place where mistakes could be fixed, a place where she could stay invisible. She had learned early that invisibility was protection. It's not because she was weak, but because the world wasn't kind to women who wanted to fight. The army had rules, and she had learned to bend them without breaking the surface. She had served in silence long enough to believe she could remain unseen forever, until the patch. The patch wasn't official. It wasn't approved. It wasn't even meant to be there. It was a small emblem sewn onto her sleeve, hidden under the cuff when she rolled it down. A symbol of a unit she. Dee once belonged to a unit that had been wiped out in a mission that the army had never officially acknowledged. She wore it because it was the only proof that she had been there. The only proof that she had survived. And because she couldn't bear the thought of forgetting them. The repair room was crowded with uniforms that smelled of smoke and sweat. Dust floated in the shafts of sunlight that broke through the high windows, making the air look like it was filled with tiny stars. Soldiers came in with torn sleeves and ripped collars, their faces tired and raw. They didn't talk much, not when the war had already taken so much. Lena's hands moved fast, threading needles, smoothing creases, repairing what could be repaired. It was a simple task, but it carried a quiet importance. She was mending more than fabric. She was helping soldiers keep their dignity, keeping them feeling like themselves in a world that had tried to strip them down to numbers. The general arrived unexpectedly. His presence filled the room even before he spoke. He moved like a man used to being obeyed, yet his eyes carried a fatigue that no rank could hide. He was inspecting the unit, looking for weaknesses, for cracks in the armor. He didn't want to see emotion, wanted to see order. When he stopped at Lena's table, she felt her heart spike. She kept her head down, pretending not to notice. She didn't want to be seen. She didn't want to be questioned. But he noticed. He leaned in, watching the patch on her sleeve as she adjusted a seam. His gaze sharpened, and the air in the room seemed to change. The soldiers around them fell silent, sensing the shift. "What is that?" he asked, voice low. Lena froze. Her fingers paused mid-stitch. The machine whirred softly, suddenly loud in the quiet room. She looked up slowly, meeting his eyes. There was a moment where she thought he would order her punished, or worse, sent away. Instead, he stepped closer, studying the patch with a look she couldn't read. "It's not a standard unit," he said. "It's not on the roster." Lena swallowed. She could feel her throat tighten, like a rope pulling inward. The moral question rose in her mind. Speak the truth and risk everything, or lie and carry the weight forever? She thought about the men who had died, about the promise she had made, about the silence that had been her shield. Her voice came out small, but steady. "It's the unit I served with," she said. "They didn't come back." The general's face changed. Not with anger, but with recognition. He looked at her as if he had seen a ghost. He turned away, then back again, like he was trying to decide what to do with the truth. The room stayed quiet. The soldiers watched, their eyes wide. Some were shocked, some were angry, or others looked afraid, as if they had been reminded that the army wasn't just a system, but a collection of human lives. The general finally spoke, his voice softer than before. "You were in the mission that never happened," he said. Lena nodded, unable to stop the tremor in her hands. "Yes." A murmur ran through the room, growing louder, then suddenly dying as everyone realized what this meant. If the mission was real, then the cover-up was real. If the cover-up was real, then so was the pain that had been buried. The general stared at her for a long moment. The silence stretched heavy and full of questions. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old, worn, and stained with time. He placed it on the table, gently, as if it was fragile. "This is the list," he said. "The names that were erased." Lena's breath caught. Her eyes blurred. She knew some of the names. She knew all of them. The list was proof of what she had been forced to carry alone. The general continued, his voice quiet but firm. "You repaired uniforms in silence. You kept them going. You kept yourself alive. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." The room remained still. Even the sewing machines seemed to pause, as if listening. Then, like a tide breaking, the soldiers began to speak. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a collective honesty that had been missing for too long. "I remember them. They were my friends. They deserved better." The general nodded, and for the first time, he looked like a man who understood that leadership wasn't just about orders. It was about responsibility. That night, Lena sat alone again, but the silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It was filled with something new, recognition and the possibility of justice. Because sometimes the quietest work is the most courageous. And the patches we wear are not just symbols, they are stories waiting to be told. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you believe every sacrifice deserves to be remembered, subscribe to Whispered Words for more true-style military stories that touch the heart. Because truth doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. And in the same quiet room where a needle once stitched a torn uniform, a new chapter began, stitched together by courage.